a werewolf shifter romance audiobook written by Catherine Stewart. Prologue. The scent of pine and damp earth, usually a grounding fragrance for any werewolf, did little to soothe the frigid landscape of Alpha Rhys Obsidian's soul. He stood, poised on the precipice of the Blackwood Ridge. The wind whipped his dark hair, his gaze, a hawk's gaze, sweeping over the moon-kissed territory of the Red Moon Pack. Below, his domain lay silent, orderly, secure, a testament to the iron will that had forged it from blood and from ash. His will. A low growl rumbled deep in his chest, not of contentment, no, but of unyielding, relentless vigilance. Control, it was his creed, his shield, it had to be. A flicker of movement in the shadows below, a deer perhaps, that was all it took. The snap of a twig under its hoof, carried on the wind. It wasn't the sound of a deer, no, it was splintering wood. The crackle of fire, no, oh no. The scent of pine, suddenly cloying, thick, choked him with the remembered aroma of burning thatch and something else, something metallic, sickening. It clung to the back of his throat, even now. 2 decades later, 22 years earlier, the Whispering Glade Pack territory. Rhys, a boy of 6, small for his age but with eyes that missed little. He was huddled, no, shoved, under the loose floorboard of his cot, his mother's desperate last push still smarting on his shoulder. Her scent, lavender and wild honey, already fading, overwhelmed by the acrid smoke, seeping through the cracks. "Stay hidden, my brave little wolf, not a sound. Promise me, Rhys, promise." Her voice, usually a lilting song. Now, a raw, terrified whisper. He'd promised. His small body trembled, so violently he bit his lip, bit it hard to keep his teeth from chattering. The floorboards above, they vibrated. Heavy thuds, paws, guttural snarls. Beasts, alien and terrifying. These were not pack sounds. These were the sounds of slaughter. The Ironfang Marauders, their sigil, a blood-red claw rending a silver moon, whispered in fearful tones by the elders. Now, that nightmare was real. Its soundtrack? The screams of his packmates, the clash of claw against claw, the sickening thuds of bodies, falling. He squeezed his eyes shut, hands clamped tight over his ears. But the images, they burned behind his eyelids. His alpha father, a titan of black fur and righteous fury, standing before their den, a desperate shield. His Lunar mother, smaller but no less fierce, fighting back to back with him. Her silver fur, stained crimson. A roar, louder than any before. It ripped through the chaos. His father's. It was followed by a choked cry. Then a sound that would haunt Rhys's nightmares for eternity. A wet, tearing sound, and a final, gurgling whimper. His mother's. Terror. Stark. Absolute. It stole his breath. He couldn't scream. He couldn't move. He could only listen. Listen as the triumphant, savage howls of the Ironfang echoed through the glade, as their heavy paws stomped closer, then, miraculously, receded. The scent of their alien musk, rank, victorious, slowly dissipated, leaving behind only the stench of death and devastation. Hours later, or perhaps days, time had lost all meaning. He crawled out. The world, gray ash and crimson snow. The Whispering Glade was a graveyard. His home, a smoking ruin. He found them, his parents, near the great oak where they had so often told him stories of the moon goddess. Their once proud forms were... He couldn't look. The image seared itself into his mind anyway. A fixed point of agony. He was alone. A 6-year-old pup. The last of his line. His heart. A frozen stone in his chest. That day, something within him fractured, then hardened into a core of diamond-sharp ice. Love. Family. Pack. These were not anchors. They were vulnerabilities. Targets, the Ashworths, the kind human couple who'd found a traumatized silent boy wandering the edges of their farm. They had tried to thaw that ice with their gentle warmth. For a time, Rhys had almost let them. He'd buried his wolf deep, lived a semblance of a normal life. The memories a constant dull ache rather than a fresh, gaping wound. Then they, too, were gone, ripped from him by the casual cruelty of common criminals, a senseless home invasion. He'd been 20, his werewolf nature fully reawakened, his power growing. He had just begun to taste vengeance against the scattered Ironfang remnants, to build something new from the ruins of his past. He had thought, perhaps, he could offer the Ashworths safety, a different kind of future. But the universe, it seemed, had a singular, brutal lesson for Rhys Obsidian. Attachment was a precursor to agony. Connection, a death sentence for those he might dare to care for. The deer in the distance finally broke cover, bounding away into the deeper woods. The imagined scent of smoke faded, replaced once more by the clean, cold air of the Blackwood Ridge. Rhys's eyes, the color of ancient ice, held no trace of the terrified boy. None. His jaw was set, his shoulders broad, unyielding. He had learned the universe's lesson, and learned it well. He had built walls of iron and frost, around his heart, and around his pack. No one would ever get close enough to shatter him again. No one. He would ensure it. The Red Moon Pack would thrive, not on warmth, but on unassailable strength. On his absolute, ruthless control. It was the only way to survive, the only way to ensure the past remained just that, buried, if never forgotten. Will Rhys ever allow his wounded heart to choose a future of love over a past defined by devastating loss? It was etched into the very lines of his unyielding silhouette against the moon. And for now, his entire being was a resounding, defiant answer. Never. Alpha Rhys Obsidian stood tall, his shadow stretched long in the cold morning light of his main office. And then, his beta, Marcus, entered. Marcus was older, his face lined like a well-worn map, but his eyes were sharp, always sharp. "Alpha," Marcus began, his voice a low rumble. "The Border Patrol's report, nothing. All quiet. Again." Rhys just nodded. His own gaze was fixed on the sprawling map of the Red Moon territory pinned to the wall, a dark, sprawling thing of ink and ambition. His ambition, his pack, his responsibility. Silence was good. Silence meant control, and control, well, control was everything, wasn't it? Because he remembered a time when there wasn't silence, only screams, only fire. Deep down he knew the truth. The quiet was a lie. It was always a lie. He finally turned, his eyes like chips of winter ice. "The tribute from the Stone Creek pack is late, Marcus." Not a question, a statement. Cold, hard. Marcus shifted, a big man suddenly looking smaller. "Yes, Alpha. They send excuses. A poor hunting season, they say." Rhys let out a breath. It wasn't a sigh. It was a dismissal. Excuses are for the weak. They know the terms. Because rules kept the wolves from the door, didn't they? Rules kept the past from repeating. What followed was a curt nod. "See to it." Marcus bowed his head. "Of course, Alpha." He hesitated. That was new. Marcus rarely hesitated. "And then, there is the matter of the elders, Alpha. They wish to speak with you. About an heir." An heir. The word was a stone dropped into a frozen pond. Rhys felt something clench deep inside him, something cold and tight. His wolf pressed forward, a silent snarl against the unwanted intrusion. An heir meant a mate, a connection, a weakness. He'd seen what happened to weakness. He lived it every damn day. His voice, when it came, was flat, deadly. "Tell the elders I am occupied." Marcus simply nodded again, but his eyes held a flicker of something. Pity? Concern? Rhys didn't care. As Marcus left, Rhys turned back to the window. The sun was higher now, but it brought no warmth to the room, or to him. He thought of his parents, the fire, the screams, and then the Ashworths, gone too. Just like that. Love was a trap, a cruel joke played by a silent moon goddess. Maybe it was fate that he was alone. He didn't know what scared him more, the memories, or the thought of ever feeling that kind of loss again. No, he wouldn't. He couldn't. He had built his walls too high, too thick, which meant he had to find another way. A way without feeling. The thought, cold and sharp, began to form. A solution. Clinical. Controlled. This decision would echo, wouldn't it? Echo through all the days to come. Willowthorn's world had shrunk. Shrunk to the relentless rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor beside her little brother's hospital bed. And then, the scent of antiseptic. It burned her nose, made her stomach churn. Finn, her Finn, looked so small, so pale against the stark white sheets. His chest barely rose with each shallow breath. The doctor's words from yesterday, they echoed, a cruel, repeating loop. Experimental treatment, very expensive. No guarantees. No guarantees. But it was their only hope, wasn't it? She squeezed Finn's tiny, cool hand. His skin felt like old paper. "I'll fix this, Finny," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I promise. I'll get the money." But how? Oh, how? She worked 2 jobs already, cleaning offices at night, the smell of stale coffee and floor wax clinging to her, serving lukewarm chili at a diner during the day. Still, it was never enough. Never. Her savings, gone. Loan applications, rejected, one after another. What's worse, the hospital administrator had cornered her that morning, his voice polite but firm. "Miss Thorne, we need a substantial deposit to continue Finn's current level of care." To make things worse, her stomach chose that moment to growl, a hollow, aching sound. She hadn't eaten. Not really. Not since... when? Guilt, sharp and familiar, twisted inside her. How could she eat when Finn couldn't? Deep down, she knew the truth. She was failing him. Failing the one person in the whole world who mattered. Her phone, an old, cracked thing, buzzed on the nightstand. Probably another bill collector. She ignored it. Instead, her gaze fell on a crumpled flyer she'd almost thrown away. She'd seen it tacked to a bulletin board at the community center. "Discreet opportunity," it read. "Generous compensation for suitable candidates." Surrogacy. The word itself felt foreign, shameful, yet a spark. A tiny, desperate spark. Could she really do that? For Finn, her heart skipped, then hammered against her ribs. Her body moved on instinct, her fingers reaching for the flyer. She smoothed out the wrinkles. The phone number at the bottom seemed to swim before her eyes. With every heartbeat, the beep of Finn's monitor seemed to get louder, more urgent. She didn't know what scared her more, making that call or not making it. Before she could move, before she could second-guess the desperate thrumming in her veins, her fingers were dialing. The silence stretched as the phone rang on the other end. Once. Twice. Each ring was a lifetime. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was just the last terrifying option left. This call, she knew, this single act of desperation, it was going to change everything. How could it not? Rhys stared at the flickering flames in the massive stone hearth of his private study. Fire. It had taken so much from him. Yet here he was, using its light to read over the final candidate profiles. Profiles for a vessel. That's what she would be. Nothing more. Marcus had been efficient. Of course he had. That's why Marcus was his beta. The files were concise, medical histories, psychological evaluations, the humankind, pathetically superficial, financial backgrounds. Desperation was a useful motivator, wasn't it? and a key requirement: no messy emotional ties on their end. His wolf stirred, a low, unhappy rumble deep inside. It didn't like this cold, unnatural selection, but Rhys ruthlessly suppressed it. His wolf didn't understand. It hadn't seen what he'd seen, hadn't lost what he'd lost. This was about legacy, about the Red Moon Pack's future. Not only that, it was about control. His control over his life, over his line. He wouldn't be like his father, ruled by a fated bond, a love that had ultimately led to his death, to the destruction of everything. No. Candidate 37B, he said, his voice flat, devoid of any inflection. He tapped the file. Willow Thorne, she meets all criteria. Healthy, young, no significant family ties save for a sick sibling, a clear financial motivator. Perfect. Marcus, standing by the door, nodded. Her medicals are impeccable, Alpha, and her background checking, she's clean. Desperate, as you stipulated. Desperate enough to sign the contract, all clauses. Rhys didn't look up, because he didn't want to see the flicker of something in Marcus's eyes. Was it disapproval? Pity? He didn't care. Yes, Alpha. She understands the terms. Full relinquishment, no contact, generous compensation upon successful delivery of a healthy male heir. A male heir? Rhys allowed himself a grim internal smile. He would have his son, his pack would have its future, Alpha, and he would remain untouched, unbroken. As if pulled by a string, his gaze drifted back to the flames. He remembered his mother's lullabies, soft and warm. He pushed the memory down, violently. Such things had no place here, no place in his world. Proceed, Marcus, he ordered. Initiate the process. Inform Miss Thorne she is to be moved to the West Wing cottage immediately. No delays. Marcus bowed. It will be done, Alpha. As the door clicked shut behind his beta, Rhys finally looked away from the fire. The room felt colder now, emptier, which meant his plan was perfect. He felt nothing, exactly as it should be. But then, a strange, fleeting image. Golden eyes, a scent of wild herbs and rain. He blinked, shook his head. Stress, nothing more. The West Wing cottage was well isolated. He wouldn't even have to see her. This would be clean, clinical. He had no idea, of course, no idea at all how wrong he was. This decision, this cold, calculated act, it was a stone thrown into the still waters of fate. And the ripples. Oh, the ripples were already beginning to spread. The journey was a blur. One moment, Willow signing papers, heavy as tombstones. Her hand shook so badly that signature, a child's scrawl. And then, a sleek black car with windows so dark they seemed to swallow the light. No goodbyes to Finn. He was sleeping, blessedly peaceful for once. Instead, just a whispered promise to his still form. A promise to be strong, to endure. For him, that's why she was doing this, right? Because there was no other choice left. The car ate up the miles in silence. No questions asked, no answers given. Her escort was a woman with a face like polished granite, and eyes that saw everything but revealed nothing. Deep down, she knew the truth. This wasn't just a new place. It was a new life. One with invisible bars. Eventually, they arrived. Not at a clinic or some sterile facility she'd imagined, but at a cottage. It was beautiful, like something from a storybook. Stone walls draped in ivy, a garden spilling over with wildflowers, their colors almost too bright, too cheerful. It was nestled deep within a forest so vast and silent, it felt like the edge of the world. The air here was different, crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, so unlike the city's grime. But then, the silence itself, it became a weight. Your new residence, Miss Thorne, the granite woman said, her voice as smooth and hard as her face. Everything you require will be provided. Your only responsibility is to remain healthy and compliant. Compliant? The word pricked. Still, Willow nodded. What else could she do? Inside, the cottage was even more surprising. Luxurious, yes, with soft rugs underfoot that felt like walking on clouds, and furniture that probably cost more than she'd earned in her entire life. Yet, it was also lonely. The silence here, a living thing, broken only by the ticking of an ornate grandfather clock in the hall, and the distant sigh of the wind in the pines. A gilded cage, then. That's what this was. But it was a cage that paid for Finn's treatment. More importantly, the first payment had already been transferred. The hospital had confirmed it. That single thought, her lifeline. Days blurred into a routine. Nutritious meals appeared as if by magic. A stern but not unkind nurse visited daily for checkups. The insemination procedure itself had been clinical, impersonal. She felt like a prized mare, not a woman. She didn't know what scared her more, the strangeness of it all, or the blank, unknown future stretching before her. That night she dreamt of Finn laughing, his cheeks rosy, chasing butterflies in a field of those too bright wildflowers. Maybe it was fate, she thought as she woke, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. Maybe this strange, gilded cage was the price for his laughter. And if it was, well, she would pay it. She had to. What followed was the slow, quiet unfolding of early pregnancy, marked by the nurse's clinical pronouncements and the ever-present watchful silence of her beautiful prison. This new chapter, though isolating, held the key to her brother's future. 3 months. 3 long months had crawled by. And then, the nurse, after one of her thorough, impersonal examinations, had finally announced it, her voice flat. Pregnancy confirmed, Miss Thorne. Development is optimal. Optimal. Willow's hand drifted to her still flat stomach. A tiny life. A stranger's child. Her benefactor's heir. It felt unreal. A strange mix of detachment and a tiny protective flutter she couldn't quite suppress. More importantly, Finn was responding to the treatments. His doctors were cautiously optimistic. Because of that, Willow clung to this routine, this isolation. Each day was a step closer to Finn's recovery. Each meal eaten, each vitamin swallowed. For him. Yet the loneliness, a heavy cloak. The beautiful cottage with its soft furnishings and endless supply of books she couldn't concentrate on, felt more like a beautifully appointed cell. No phone. No internet beyond a heavily restricted tablet for approved entertainment. No word from the outside world except curt, written updates on Finn's condition, delivered by the granite-faced woman. Who was this benefactor? This man who demanded such secrecy, such possession? Sometimes at night, when the wind howled through the pines like a mournful wolf, she would imagine him, a faceless shadow, powerful, cold, maybe even cruel. She shivered despite the warmth of the cashmere throw. Truth be told, she missed the city's noise, the hustle, even the grit. Here, the silence often felt watchful. And sometimes, just sometimes, she thought she smelled something else on the wind. Something wild and musky, like a forest animal, but different. Stronger. It would make the hairs on her arms stand up. A primal unease she couldn't explain. As if the forest watched. Waiting. But for what? She couldn't guess. Rhys slammed his pen down. The quarterly pack reports blurred before his eyes. His wolf, a restless beast, pacing the confines of his soul, snarling at shadows only it could see. It had been like this for weeks, months even. Ever since the vessel had been installed in the West Wing cottage. He refused to call her by her name, refused to think of her as anything more than a means to an end. An heir. For the pack. Still, this agitation. It was new. Unwelcome. He prided himself on his control, his icy calm. But now? Now there was an undercurrent, a thrumming beneath his skin. As if pulled by a string, his thoughts would sometimes drift towards that isolated cottage. Annoyance. That's what it was. Annoyance at this disruption, this complication. "Marcus!" he barked into the intercom. Moments later, his beta appeared, calm as ever. "Alpha?" "The borders," Rhys said, his voice tight. "Any more reports of those disturbances? The strange tracks? The unsettling scents the patrols mentioned near the Whispering Falls?" That's why he was on edge. External threats. Not some woman. This was one of those open loops he hated. An unanswered question on his own territory. Just what was lurking out there? Marcus's brow furrowed slightly. The tracks were unidentifiable alpha. Not bear, not rogue. And the scent, unusual, faint, almost not of this world, some said. But nothing further has been reported for a week now. I have doubled the patrols in that sector as you ordered. Good. Rhys waved a dismissive hand. See that it stays quiet. Yet even as he spoke, his wolf let out a low, frustrated growl. It wasn't the borders that truly unsettled it. It was something closer. Something elusive. Something that smelled in his fleeting, unwelcome dreams, like wild herbs in summer rain. A ridiculous notion. He pushed it down. Hard. Without another word, he turned back to his reports, the image of golden eyes flashing, then gone. Stress. It had to be. This air couldn't come soon enough. Then this whole charade would be over. He hoped. It was a raw, blustery evening. The kind that made a werewolf's senses sing, every nuance of the forest amplified. Rhys was on a patrol himself, a rare indulgence. He needed the bite of the wind, the burn in his muscles, something to quell the infernal restlessness that had plagued him for months. His usual route skirted far from the West Wing, far from the source of his unacknowledged disquiet. But then, as the wind shifted, it happened. A scent. Not just any scent. This was her. It slammed into him with the force of a physical blow. Wild herbs, yes, but tangled with the rich sweetness of rain-soaked earth and something else. Something uniquely feminine. Something that bypassed every wall, every defense he'd ever erected. It was the scent his wolf had been howling for in the deepest, most denied recesses of his soul. Mate. The word wasn't a thought. It was a detonation. It exploded through him, shattering his composure, ripping through years of icy control. His heart stopped, then hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. His knees almost buckled. He staggered, clutching a rough-barked pine for support, his breath tearing from his lungs in ragged gasps. No, it couldn't be. This was impossible. A human? His surrogate? The moon goddess wouldn't be so cruel, so utterly maliciously perverse. Would she? His wolf surged, a tidal wave of primal possessive fury and an agonizing ecstatic recognition. Mine. Claim. Protect. It roared, clawing at the bars of his control. He felt an almost violent urge to hunt her down, drag her to his den, mark her, bury himself in that scent until the world ceased to exist. The sheer untamed ferocity of his reaction. It terrified him more than any Ironfang Marauder ever could. This was chaos. This was weakness. This was everything he'd sworn to eradicate from his life. No, he choked out, the word a raw tear in the fabric of the night. His knuckles were white where he gripped the tree, the bark biting into his skin. It can't be her. Deep down, he knew the truth. The scent was unique, unmistakable, and it was coming from that damned cottage. The moment their eyes locked, or rather the moment he knew with soul-deep certainty whose scent it was, his world tilted, his carefully constructed existence built on loss and control, fracturing, cracks spiderwebbed through the ice around his heart. Between one breath and the next, his carefully planned, emotionless future, a lie. This changed everything. With every heartbeat, The scent pulled at him, an invisible chain. Before he could think, before he could reason, his body was moving. As if pulled by a string, he found himself stalking towards the West Wing cottage, a predator drawn to its fated prey. Fury, denial, and a terrifying, burgeoning hunger warred within him. He was going to see her, and he was going to understand what in the goddess's cursed name was happening to him. This could not stand. The air thickened around him, charged with a power he hadn't felt since he was a child, safe in his mother's embrace. The thought was a fresh stab of pain. No, he wouldn't allow it. His pace quickened, each step a drumbeat of doom, or destiny, or perhaps both. This path, he sensed, led to a confrontation he was not prepared for, yet one he could no longer avoid. He didn't knock. Why would he? This was his territory. She was something his wolf screamed was his. Rhys Obsidian threw the door to the West Wing cottage open with such force it slammed against the interior wall, a crack like thunder splitting the oppressive quiet. And then he saw her, Willow Thorn. She was curled on a plush armchair, a book forgotten in her lap, her eyes wide with sudden alarm. Her scent, that impossible, intoxicating scent of wild herbs and summer rain, it punched into him again, stronger now, a direct hit to his soul. His wolf went insane, clawing, howling, mate, mate, mine. You! His voice was a raw, guttural snarl he barely recognized as his own. Each step he took towards her felt like wading through thick, resisting tar, his mind warring violently with his instincts. As if pulled by a string, his body wanted to close the distance, to inhale her, to mark her. But his sanity, what little remained, screamed danger, weakness, trap. Willow scrambled to her feet, her hand flying to her throat, her knuckles white. Her eyes, those wide dough-brown eyes, were filled with a confusion that quickly morphed into sheer terror. Good. Fear he understood, fear he could manage. Alpha! Her voice trembled, a mere whisper. Her breath caught. What witchcraft is this? He demanded, his alpha aura blazing, deliberately trying to crush her, to intimidate the truth out of her. Who sent you? What are you really? Because this couldn't be real. A human surrogate couldn't smell like the other half of his soul. It was a trick, a deception. Deep down, he knew the truth, or rather his wolf did, but he fought it, tooth and nail. I don't understand, she stammered, shrinking back. Her scent spiked with fear, and even that, damn it all, even that was a siren song to his wolf. He saw a faint tremor run through her. Was it just fear, or something more? Could this woman, this human surrogate, truly be his fated mate? The one destined to shatter his carefully constructed defenses? The thought an agony. Before she could move, he was closer, invading her space, his shadow falling over her. He could smell the gentle soap she used, the faint, sweet scent of her skin beneath the mate scent. His fingers twitched with the urge to touch, to confirm, and that terrified him most of all. You will tell me everything, he roared, the sound echoing in the small room. He saw her flinch, saw her eyes well with tears, and a strange, unwelcome pang went through him. Weakness, he recoiled internally. In that moment, as her terror peaked, he saw it again, a fleeting, almost imperceptible shimmer in her eyes, a flash of something ancient and gold, just for a heartbeat. Then it was gone. He blinked. Had he imagined it? Stress? Or was there more to this willow thorn than met the eye? More than he'd ever bargained for? The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. He had to get out, had to think, before he did something irrevocable. Without another word, he spun on his heel and stalked out, leaving her trembling in his wake, the scent of her, his mate, burning in his lungs like a brand. This was not over. This was only the terrifying, impossible beginning. This abrupt departure left more questions than answers. A storm brewing in its wake, the encounter in the cottage left Rhys shaken to his core. That scent, that reaction. It was undeniably the call of a mate, but a human. Impossible. Or was it? Something inside him shifted, a crack in his certainty. What followed was a restless night, his wolf pacing, his mind racing. He had to know more about this Willowthorn. There was something off. That flash of gold in her eyes. He dismissed it before his stress, but now, it felt like a splinter under his skin. Come morning, he gave Marcus a curt order. The woman, Willowthorn. I want to know everything, every doctor she's ever seen, every school she attended, any unusual incidents in her past. Discreetly, Marcus. Very discreetly. He couldn't let the pack know his turmoil, his potential vulnerability, because vulnerability was death. He knew that better than anyone. Marcus, ever perceptive, simply nodded. It will be handled, Alpha. Even so, Rhys saw the question in his beta's eyes, a question Rhys himself couldn't answer. What was he looking for? He didn't know, but he needed an explanation, a logical one. This uncertainty was a weakness he couldn't afford. After the Alpha's terrifying visit, Willow felt like a frayed nerve, his anger, his raw power. It had been like standing in the path of a storm. Her thoughts spun. Why had he been so furious? What had she done? And that strange, intense way he'd looked at her, as if he were seeing a ghost. Days later, strange things began to happen. Small things at first. A paper cut on her finger vanished overnight, leaving smooth, unblemished skin. No matter how hard she tried to ignore it, she couldn't. And then, her senses seemed sharper. She could hear the rustle of a mouse in the cottage walls, smell the rain coming long before the clouds gathered. One afternoon, a heavy vase teetered on a high shelf. Before she could move, before her mind even registered the danger, her hand shot out with impossible speed, catching it just inches from the floor. Her heart hammered. How had she done that? Her world tilted. Was she going mad? Or was this place, this pregnancy, changing her in ways she didn't understand? Was this what her benefactor expected? Some kind of hidden trait? She felt a new kind of fear, not of the Alpha, but of herself. This power, this unknown, it was a silent tremor beneath the surface of her life. Marcus returned a week later, his expression grim. Alpha, the initial reports on Willowthorn are perplexing. Perplexing how? Rhys snapped, his patience thin. He hadn't slept properly in days, haunted by her scent, by that flicker of gold. Her early life is unremarkable, Marcus said, handing over a slim file. But there are anomalies. Several instances of unusually rapid healing from minor childhood injuries, dismissed by doctors as resilience, reports of heightened intuition, even a local legend from her great-grandmother's time, something about a woman who could soothe beasts with a touch, dismissed as folklore, of course. Folklore. Rhys's gut clenched. As if summoned, the pack doctor, Elder Alara, was announced. She looked grave. Alpha, Alara said, her voice low after Marcus was dismissed. Following your concerns after your visit to the West Wing, and with Miss Thorne's reluctant consent for further tests, I have made a discovery. Rhys waited, his heart a cold stone. She is not human, Alpha. Alara's words were quiet, yet they thundered in the room. Not entirely. Her genetic markers are werewolf, latent, very deeply suppressed but undeniably present, and Omega by all indications. Werewolf Omega, his surrogate, his mate, was a werewolf. The world tilted again, more violently this time. The tension broke, or rather shattered, within him. It explained the scent, the bond, but it also deepened the nightmare. He had chosen a werewolf surrogate. Unknowingly, the irony, a cruel, laughing demon. She doesn't know, Rhys managed, his voice a rasp. No indication she does, Alpha. It seems her lineage, hid, for generations. His wolf pressed forward, a strange mix of triumph and fury. Mate, wolf. And then, Rhys's own terror resurfaced, colder, sharper. He had tried to avoid a mate, and fate had delivered one to him, gift-wrapped in deception and impossibility. "This changes nothing," Rhys said, his voice like the scrape of steel on stone. He stood, turning his back on Alara, on the truth. She is the surrogate. Nothing more. Ensure she remains healthy. He would deny it. He would fight it. He had to. This was a curse, not a blessing. But as Alara left, the scent of wild herbs and rain seemed to cling to him, a promise and a threat. This truth, once unraveled, could not be respun, and the implications were only just beginning to surface. The news that she wasn't entirely human, it was like a punch to the gut. Werewolf? Her? Willow Thorn, who fainted at the sight of blood. It made no sense. Yet, it also explained things. The strange healing, the heightened senses, that pull she sometimes felt towards the forest, towards the moon. As her wolf stirred, or rather the idea of it, a strange mix of terror and a bizarre sense of homecoming washed over her. Could this be why the Alpha had reacted so intensely? Days turned into a week of bewildered introspection. She felt different, aware, as if the world narrowed, sounds were sharper, scents more vivid. One evening, a violent thunderstorm crashed around the cottage. Lightning split a massive pine just outside her window. The tree groaned, then fell with a deafening roar, showering the cottage with debris. One heavy branch smashed through the window, sending splinters of glass and wood flying. Panic, raw and absolute, seized her. Her body moved on instinct. She threw herself over her belly, a desperate shield. "No," she cried out, not just for herself, but for the tiny life within. And then, something happened. It wasn't a conscious thought. It was a wave. A silent, golden energy pulsed from her, warm and inexplicably calming. The very air in the room seemed to shimmer. The chaotic terror that had gripped her moments before. It receded, replaced by a profound, almost supernatural stillness. As if fate demanded it, the falling debris seemed to slow, to divert, most of it landing harmlessly around her. She felt powerful, and utterly terrified by that power. What was this? She stared at her hands, half expecting them to glow. He was there in an instant. The crash had echoed even to the main house, his alpha senses screaming danger. Mate! He burst into the cottage, expecting carnage, his own wolf a raging inferno of protective fury. Instead, he found peace. An almost unholy calm permeated the air, thick and sweet like honeyed sunlight. Willow was on the floor, shaken but seemingly unharmed, amidst shattered glass and splintered wood. But it was the air around her, the lingering golden luminescence that was fading even as he watched. The unique, incredibly potent Omega scent, far stronger, far more complex than just Omega, that made him freeze. This wasn't just any Omega distress he was sensing. This was ancient, powerful, something he'd only read about in the oldest, most forgotten pack lore. Just what kind of Omega was she? Elder Alara, who had rushed in behind him, gasped. Her eyes, usually so steady, were wide with disbelief. "Moon goddess," she whispered, her gaze fixed on Willow. "It cannot be." "What is it, Alara?" Rhys demanded, his voice hoarse, his own senses reeling from the residual power in the room. He could still feel it, a gentle thrum that soothed the jagged edges of his own tormented wolf in a way nothing ever had. Alara slowly approached Willow, who was now staring at her own hands as if they belonged to a stranger. "The scent, the aura," Alara murmured, then looked at Rhys, her face a mask of awe and trepidation. "Alpha, I believe she is a Hearth Omega." A Hearth Omega. The word struck Rhys like a physical blow. He'd thought them legend, a myth whispered by old she-wolves. Omegas whose very presence could soothe, heal, bring profound peace and unity to a pack. Omegas whose lineage was tied to the very spiritual heart of their kind. Omegas who were said to choose their alphas, not the other way around. An almost sacred lineage lost for centuries, and she, his surrogate, his fated mate, was one of them. His world tilted yet again. This wasn't just a mate, this wasn't just a werewolf. This was destiny. A destiny he had fought tooth and nail to avoid, now staring him in the face with wide, terrified, golden-flecked eyes. The tension broke, shattered into a million confusing pieces. What did this mean? For him? For his pack? For this woman who carried his heir and his fate? The ancient prophecies Ilara had once shown him, fragmented and obscure, about a Hearth Omega returning in a time of great need. Could they be true? And if so, what great need was coming? This question, unanswered, hung heavy in the air. He looked at Willow, truly looked at her, and for the first time, the ice around his heart didn't just crack. A tiny, terrifying piece of it actually melted. This changes everything, he thought. The words no longer a denial, but a dawning, dreadful, and perhaps even wondrous realization. The path ahead was no longer clear. It was shrouded in ancient magic, and a future he could not control. And the whispers of those prophecies, they began to echo in his mind. The news of Willow being a Hearth Omega spread through the Red Moon Pack like wildfire. And then, the whispers started. Some were awed. Some, like Selena, were openly scornful. Truth be told, Rhys felt their eyes on him, on Willow when she was rarely seen. During a tense pack council meeting, Selena, her voice dripping venom, dared to question Willow's suitability as a future Lunar. An unknown Omega, found in such unconventional circumstances, Alpha. Is she truly strong enough for this pack? Before he could think, a possessive, guttural growl ripped from Rhys's chest, so fierce, so primal, it silenced the entire council. Even he was shocked by it. His wolf had claimed her, publicly. Willow, he stated, his voice a low thunder that vibrated through the room, is under my protection. Her strength is not for you to question. Ever. The moment his words left his lips, the air crackled. He saw fear in Selena's eyes. He saw surprise in Marcus's. He also saw a dangerous new resolve in Selena's narrowed gaze. What followed was his immediate decree for stricter protection around Willow's cottage. He told himself it was for the heir, for the pack. But deep down, he knew the truth. It was for her. This unexpected, undeniable claim sent a jolt through him, a complication he hadn't anticipated, but couldn't now retract. This public display shifted things. The pack was watching. And Selena's ambition, he sensed, had just found a sharper, more dangerous edge. The whispers would only grow louder now. He was sure of it. The relative peace shattered days later. And then, chaos erupted. Word came, an Ironfang raiding party had ambushed a Red Moon border patrol, viciously, without warning. Rhys was at the site within minutes, the scent of his packmate's blood, and the acrid, hated stench of the Ironfang, a sickening fist to his gut. 2 dead, 3 grievously wounded. His past, the fire, the screams, his parents' torn bodies, slammed into him with the force of a rogue wave. His wolf pressed forward, snarling, demanding vengeance. One of the dying Ironfang warriors, pinned under Rhys's furious paw, spat a bloody message. Draven Ironfang sends his regards, Obsidian. He knows about your new treasure, your soft Omega and her pup. Treasure? Soft Omega? Pup? The words were a poisoned dart. Draven knew about Willow, about the heir, which meant they were targets. Just like that, everything changed. The threat wasn't just to his pack anymore, it was to her, to them. This was his worst nightmare, wasn't it? History repeating itself. He couldn't let that happen. Not again. Back at the den, Willow, sensing the wave of fear and fury that rolled off Rhys and through the pack's collective consciousness even from her cottage, clutched her belly, a cold dread seeping into her bones. She didn't know the details, but she felt it, clear as day. The world had just become a much more dangerous place. This new personal threat carved another deep line of worry into Rhys's already burdened soul, a wound festering alongside the old ones. The game had changed, and the stakes were now impossibly high. After Draven's threat, Rhys became a shadow. His control tightened into a suffocating grip around Willow's existence. He doubled her guards, moved her to a suite of rooms inside the main den, closer to him, safer. Or so he told himself. Because of that, he saw her more, smelled her more. The constant proximity, a sweet, agonizing torment. Every decision, every breath, was about her safety now. He snapped at anyone who came too close, his alpha aura a constant crackling shield of touch her and die. He was terrified, not for himself. For her, for the fragile hope she represented. A hope he still consciously denied. This fear was a living thing inside him, coiling tighter with each passing day. Living in the Alpha's den was overwhelming. His presence everywhere, his scent, pine and winter frost and something uniquely, dangerously male, clung to the air. His guards were shadows at her door. She felt like a prized prisoner, not a cherished mate. And then, his moods. He was a storm, one moment icy and distant, the next a silent, brooding intensity that made her skin prickle. No matter how hard she tried to understand him, he was a fortress. One evening, he found her staring out the window, a wistful look on her face. He didn't speak, just stood there, a massive, intimidating presence. As the silence stretched, Willow finally turned. "Why are you doing this, Alpha?" she asked, her voice quiet but steady. "Doing what, Omega?" he bit out, his eyes hard. "This," she gestured vaguely. "Keeping me like this. You guard me like I'm precious, yet you look at me like I'm a curse." The moment her words left her lips, something flickered in his icy eyes. Pain? Surprise? Before he could snarl a denial, she continued. "Is it me you're afraid of? Or what I represent to you?" His breath caught. Her insight. It was like a perfectly aimed arrow. He saw not just an Omega, but a woman. A woman who saw too much. This unexpected perception from her was a new kind of threat, one that his walls might not withstand. And a tiny, treacherous part of him didn't want them to. Willow's words from the night before. "Is it me you're afraid of? Or what I represent to you?" They echoed. They scraped at the ice around his heart. And then she was there, in his private study, brought by Alara for a checkup. He hadn't summoned her. Yet, here she was. Her scent, wild herbs and rain, filled the space, a torment, and a strange comfort. He found himself speaking, the words. They surprised even him. "The Ashworths," he said, his voice rough. "My adoptive parents, and they were human." He didn't look at her. Couldn't. Killed. For nothing. Just random. The silence stretched. He felt her gaze, soft, understanding. No pity. Just presence. Maybe it was fate that she was here to hear this. "Loss. It changes you," she murmured, her voice like a gentle balm. He flinched, but her words held no judgment, only a quiet truth. For the first time in years, he didn't feel entirely alone in his abyss of grief. With every heartbeat, a tiny, fragile shoot of something he dared not name pushed through the permafrost of his soul. Was this trust? Or just another weakness waiting to be exploited? He didn't know, but in that moment he didn't push her away. Instead, he let her quiet presence fill the void. Just a little. This tentative connection, however frightening, felt like the first breath after nearly drowning. This brief sharing, a monumental step for him, hung in the air between them, fragile and new. What followed was an escalation. The Ironfang Marauders weren't just probing anymore, they were hunting. A patrol near the Whispering Falls, where those strange tracks had been seen, vanished. No survivors, no bodies, just an eerie silence, and the faint, lingering scent of Ironfang. and something else. Something cold and ancient that even Rhys couldn't identify. That's why his decision was instant. "Willow is moving into my quarters," he announced to a stunned Marcus. "It's the most secure location in the den." He told himself it was purely tactical. Willow, and the air she carried, were too valuable, too vulnerable. But deep down, he knew the truth. His wolf demanded her close, demanded her safe, under his direct protection. This proximity would test every ounce of his control. The alpha's personal quarters. Her world tilted again. They were vast, masculine, smelling intensely of him. Pine, frost, and that wild, intoxicating wolf scent that made her wolf stir within her. A confused, curious flutter. He gave her the adjoining room, but the proximity was electric, suffocating. She heard his restless pacing at night, felt his oppressive presence even through the thick stone walls. The air thickened whenever he was near. One evening, a sudden alarm, a breach at the outer perimeter, sent the den into chaos. Before she could move, Rhys was there, a blur of motion, his body a hard shield in front of hers, a low, possessive growl tearing from his chest. The moment their bodies touched, fire bloomed beneath her skin, his strength, his heat, his sheer maleness. It was terrifying, and a tiny, treacherous part of her admitted, utterly thrilling. This closeness was a dangerous dance, one she wasn't sure either of them could survive unscathed. His nearness was a constant, heady reminder of the unseen bond between them. The message came with the dawn. A red moon scout, barely alive, delivered it. A bloodied Ironfang arrow, and Draven's scrawled note tied to it. "The Hearth Omega and her pup will warm my fires, Obsidian, soon." His breath caught. It was a direct personal strike at everything that was becoming precious. To make things worse, Selena chose that moment, in a private audience, to subtly imply Willow's strange aura might be attracting the danger, twisting the Hearth Omega legend into a curse. It was too much. The fear, the responsibility, the God's damned hope Willow ignited in him. Without warning, he shattered. "This is your fault," he roared, storming into Willow's room later, his control gone, his eyes blazing with pain and fury. "Your scent, your difference, you've brought this down on us, on my pack, on me." He was lashing out, a wounded beast, terrified of the bond, of losing her like all the others. His words were like whips. But as the silence roared after his outburst, Willow didn't cower. She looked at this broken, furious alpha, and she felt it, clear as day, not his anger, but his bone-deep terror. Her own fear receded, replaced by a strange, profound calm, her Hearth Omega nature asserting itself. "No, Alpha," she said, her voice soft but incredibly firm, cutting through his rage. Her voice trembled only slightly. "It is not my scent nor my difference that Draven targets. He targets your heart." She took a hesitant step closer. "He targets the part of you that is finally, desperately, trying to heal. The part of you that feels." The space between them burned. His fury faltered, confusion clouding his eyes. "You are not cursed to lose, Rhys," she continued, using his name for the first time, the sound a soft caress. "You are cursed to fear loss. There is a difference." Between one breath and the next, something profound shifted in the room. An unspoken acknowledgement of a bond deeper than either had yet admitted. Her quiet wisdom had disarmed his rage, leaving him raw and exposed. This was the true turning point. Whether he chose to embrace it or flee from it remained to be seen. His choice would define not just his future, but the fate of everyone he held dear. The horns of war, a chilling, guttural blast, shattered the pre-dawn stillness. And then, the Ironfang Marauders poured from the tree line like a rabid tide. Far more numerous than any scout had reported, far more savage. Their battle cries, a cacophony of bloodlust and hate, struck Rhys's ears like physical blows. His wolf pressed forward, a raging inferno against the ice of his fear. He was on the main rampart in seconds, Marcus at his side, his voice a low snarl as he issued commands. Hold the line. Archers, fire at will. Warriors, to your posts. Below, the first clash was brutal. Red Moon warriors met the Ironfang charge, a maelstrom of fur and fang and spraying blood. But the enemy kept coming, a relentless dark wave. To make things worse, siege ladders slammed against the outer walls. Their numbers were too many. Panic flickered at the edges of Rhys's control. He saw his warriors fall, good wolves, loyal wolves. Each loss a hammer blow against his soul, a fresh tear in old wounds. He roared, a sound of pure alpha fury, and leaped into the fray himself, a black-furred demon of vengeance. He had to protect his pack. He had to protect her. Willow, his mate, carrying his pup. The thought, a simultaneous surge of strength and unbearable terror. This couldn't be happening again. Not again. The sheer weight of the assault felt like the forest itself was trying to crush them. And a chilling premonition slithered down his spine. Without warning, a section of the western wall, far from the main assault, exploded inwards. Not from Ironfang siege engines, but from within. A secondary breach. Treachery. How? His mind raced. And then, he saw her, Selena. Her eyes blazing with mad ambition, standing amidst the dust and debris, a smoking satchel charge at her feet, Ironfang warriors already pouring through the gap she'd created. For a true Luna, she screamed above the din, her face contorted. No! Rhys roared, a sound of pure agony and betrayal. He tried to fight his way towards the new breach, towards the den where Willow was, but Ironfang warriors swarmed him, a desperate, snarling wall of enemies. He felt it, clear as day. Willow was in mortal danger. His heart, that organ he'd tried so hard to freeze, felt like it was being ripped from his chest. Willow. Her name was a prayer, a curse, on his lips. He had to reach her, no matter the cost. The explosion rocked the den. Dust and screams filled the air. Her guards, brave, loyal, rushed to the corridor, their snarls echoing. But then, new sounds, closer. As the silence stretched after a volley of fighting, heavy, unfamiliar paws padded outside her door. Not Red Moon. Her breath caught. The door splintered. Ironfang warriors, their eyes glowing with malevolent red, filled the doorway, their teeth bared, their scent rank with bloodlust. Her world tilted. She scrambled back, instinctively shielding her belly, her heart a wild drum against her ribs. There was nowhere to run. This was it then. Her end, and the end of her tiny unborn child. A single tear escaped. Rhys, she whispered. His name a fragile shield against the encroaching darkness. Rhys saw it. Through a momentary gap in the swirling, bloody chaos of the battle, he saw the Ironfang warriors smash through Willow's door. He saw her, cornered, pale, her eyes wide with a terror that mirrored the one clawing its way up his own throat. His chest ached with an unbearable pressure. He fought like a madman, a whirlwind of black fur and snapping jaws, but for every Ironfang he tore down, two more seemed to take its place. He was too far, too late. The memories, his parents' mangled bodies, the Ashworth's lifeless eyes, they flooded him, a paralyzing torrent of grief and guilt. He had failed. Again. He, Alpha Rhys Obsidian, the Ruthless, the Unbreakable. He was powerless to save the one person, the only person who had ever breached his walls, the one person who carried his heir, his mate. As if the world narrowed to that single horrific tableau, Willow, surrounded by snarling enemies, a roar of pure, unadulterated despair tore from his soul. It wasn't an Alpha's battle cry. It was the sound of a heart shattering, of a spirit breaking, his strength, his fury, his very will to fight. It drained away, leaving him hollow, empty. He slumped against a blood-slick wall, his vision blurring. It was over. He had lost. Love was loss. It always had been. Deep down, he knew the truth, or so his trauma screamed. There was no escaping fate's cruel design. Willow closed her eyes, her hand protectively on her belly. a silent prayer on her lips as the first Ironfang lunged. The silence that followed for Rhys was the loudest sound he'd ever known. This was the abyss he'd always feared, and now he was falling, endlessly, into it. As the first Ironfang lunged, a snarl ripping from its throat, Willow didn't scream. Instead, something deep inside her, something ancient and vast, uncoiled. It wasn't a conscious act. Her body moved on instinct, or rather, her soul did. A silent golden energy, warm like the first sun after a long winter, pulsed outwards from her, from the very core of her being where her child lay. It wasn't a shield of force, but a wave of feeling, overwhelming sorrow, unexpected empathy, a sudden shared understanding of loss that struck the attacking Ironfangs like a physical blow. The air thickened with it. Their snarling faces slackened, their bloodshot eyes widening in confusion. Then, dawning horror. Some whimpered. Some dropped their weapons, clutching their heads as if assailed by their own forgotten griefs. Between one breath and the next, the brutal assault on her room simply stopped. The silence that followed was more stunning than any war cry. This sudden stillness was a miracle, a terrifying, beautiful miracle she didn't understand. From the depths of his despair, Rhys saw it. He saw the impossible. The Ironfang warriors, moments from tearing his mate apart, just froze, then stumbled back, their faces contorted not with rage, but with a bizarre, shared agony. And then, he felt it, a wave of unimaginable peace, of profound empathy washing over the battlefield, even reaching him through the blood and chaos. It was Willow. It had to be. His heart skipped, then thundered with a wild, incredulous hope. This was no ordinary Omega. This was magic, ancient, powerful. Something inside him shifted. His despair, so absolute moments before, fractured. This was not an end. This was a chance bought by her, his mate, his unbelievable Hearth Omega. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. His spirit, moments before shattered, now roared back to life. Hope, a raw, jagged thing, tore through Rhys. Willow's power, that incredible soul-shaking wave. It hadn't just stopped the Ironfangs near her. It had sent ripples of confusion through their entire attacking force. He felt it, clear as day, a momentary disarray, an opening. His grief, his terror, they didn't vanish. Instead, they transmuted into a cold, clear fury, a focused resolve he hadn't felt since, well, ever. This wasn't just about vengeance for his parents anymore. This wasn't just about duty to his pack. More importantly, this was about her, about Willow, about their pup, about a future he'd been too blind, too broken to see. Red Moon, his voice, no longer choked with despair, boomed across the battlefield, infused with a new, unshakable authority. To me, we are not done. As if summoned by his reborn strength, his warriors, those still standing, rallied. He saw it in their eyes, the shock, then the dawning hope mirroring his own. The Ironfangs were disorganized, shaken by the inexplicable emotional assault. That's why his new plan formed with lightning speed. Not a brute force counterattack. No, something smarter. Something that used their current disorientation. "Marcus," he bellowed. "The West Ravine. We funnel them. Now." Without thinking beyond the immediate need to protect, to win, he was moving, his black fur a blur, his fangs bared. He was fighting for more than survival now. He was fighting for love, and that, he was starting to understand, was the greatest strength of all. This was his chance to rewrite his story, to choose a different ending. His paws devoured the blood-soaked earth. The battle shifted. As if fate demanded it, the Red Moon warriors, inspired by their alpha's renewed vigor and the Ironfang's lingering confusion, began to push back. Rhys led the charge towards the West Ravine, a deadly funnel he'd long ago identified as a tactical trap. He moved with a singular purpose. Draven Ironfang. He would end this, personally. But then, a flash of movement from the den's breached wall. Selena, trying to slip away in the chaos, her face a mask of terror and thwarted ambition. Before she could move further, Marcus and two grim-faced warriors intercepted her. Her shriek of outrage was cut short. Justice would be swift. Rhys didn't spare her a second glance. His focus was on Draven. Deep down, he knew the truth. This fight was more than pack against pack. It was past against future, despair against hope. As they neared the ravine, he felt a subtle, calming wave wash over his warriors, Willow's influence even from a distance steadying their nerves, sharpening their focus. Her wolf stirred in his mind, a silent encouragement. He was no longer fighting alone. And then, he saw him. Draven Ironfang, standing on a rocky outcrop, his red eyes burning with hatred, a snarl twisting his muzzle, the architect of so much of Rhys's pain. The moment their eyes locked, the world seemed to fall away. There was only the two of them. The air crackled. This was it, the final confrontation, the culmination of a lifetime of grief, and a newfound, desperate hope. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the final, bloody resolution. Draven Ironfang sneered from the rocky outcrop, his red eyes burning with generations of hate. Come to die, Obsidian, like your pathetic parents. His breath caught, but the old pain didn't cripple Rhys this time. Instead, a cold, clear rage settled in his heart, not the blind fury of his past, but the focused power of an alpha fighting for everything, for his mate, for his pup, for his pack's future. This ends now, Draven, he roared, his voice echoing through the ravine, and then he launched himself forward. It was a brutal primal clash, fang against fang, claw against claw. Draven was strong, fueled by a lifetime of bitterness. But then, Rhys was stronger. He fought with the memory of Willow's golden light, her unwavering faith, her soft voice saying his name. He fought with the image of their unborn child. With every heartbeat, he drove Draven back, blow by savage blow. This wasn't just a fight for territory, it was a fight for his soul. He dodged a killing snap, his black fur matted with blood, his and Draven's, and saw his opening. Without thinking, he lunged, a final devastating strike. Draven fell. Silence descended, broken only by Rhys's ragged breathing. He had done it. He had faced his past, embodied by Draven, and he had won, not through ruthlessness alone, but through a strength born of love, a love he finally, fully embraced. The Ironfang threat was over, truly over. This victory tasted different, clean and true. The air itself felt lighter, the shadows less menacing. He stood over Draven's body for a long moment, and then, every instinct, every fiber of his being, screamed one name, Willow. He shifted, his human form aching, bruised, but whole. Marcus was already there, organizing the cleanup, dealing with the few remaining Ironfang prisoners. Selena, Rhys noted with grim satisfaction, was already bound, awaiting pack justice. That's why he could turn away from the carnage. His pack was safe. He ran towards the den, towards her, towards his heart. He found her in their rooms, Ilara by her side. Willow was pale, exhausted, but her eyes, those beautiful golden-flecked eyes, lit up when she saw him. The moment their eyes locked, the world outside ceased to exist. Her heart skipped when Rhys burst through the door, bloodied but victorious, alive. Her soul answered his presence. All the fear, all the terror melted away, replaced by an overwhelming wave of love and relief. He rushed to her side, dropping to his knees, his big hands gently taking hers. Rhys. Her voice trembled. I'm here, Willow, he murmured, his voice raw, his icy eyes filled with an emotion she'd only dreamed of seeing there. Pure, unadulterated love. It's over. You're safe. Our pup is safe. Between one breath and the next, She felt a sharp, intense pang deep in her belly. Her eyes widened. "Rhys, I think the baby is coming." His own eyes widened in a comical mix of shock and dawning joy, a look so unlike the ruthless alpha she first met. And in that look, she saw their future, a future filled with a love she never thought possible. Come morning, or rather several exhausting, miraculous hours later, a new cry echoed in the alpha's chambers. A healthy baby girl, with a shock of dark hair like her father's and eyes that held the golden promise of her mother's Hearth Omega lineage. Rhys held his daughter, his mate resting beside him, and the ice around his heart wasn't just melted, it was gone, replaced by a warmth so profound it was a physical ache. And just like that, everything changed. Months later, Luna Willow stood beside her alpha, her quiet strength and compassion a beacon for the Red Moon Pack. Her Hearth Omega gifts had indeed brought healing, not just to individuals, but to the pack's spirit. They were stronger now, more united than ever. Because of that, Rhys found he led differently. Still powerful, still resolute, but his ruthlessness was tempered with Willow's wisdom, his decisions guided by love as much as duty. He was a father, a mate, a true alpha, finally whole. Finn, his health fully restored thanks to the resources Willow's initial sacrifice had provided, often visited, a beloved human uncle to the pack's newest pup. The Whispering Falls mystery remained, a gentle question mark for another day. But the borders were secure. Beneath the moonlight, Rhys would often watch Willow with their daughter, a fierce, tender love swelling in his chest. He had faced loss, embraced love, and found a future he never thought possible. The wind carried his name, no longer as just the ruthless alpha, but as the alpha who had found his heart, his hearth, his home, and his mate. The poor Omega who had been his surrogate, now stood as his cherished Luna, her quiet power the truest strength of all. Their journey had been a testament to love's enduring power. Epilogue. 3 winters had softened the sharp edges of the Red Moon territory, not with weakness but with a deep, settled peace. And then, spring had arrived again, painting the land in vibrant greens and the riotous colors of wildflowers. Rhys Obsidian, no longer solely the ruthless alpha but also a devoted mate and father, watched his daughter, Rowan, chase a bright blue butterfly across their private meadow. Her dark curls, so like his own, bounced with every gleeful, wobbling step. Her laughter, a pure, untamed sound, echoed the joy that now resided permanently in his once frozen heart. Because of that, a smile touched his lips, a genuine expression that Willow still sometimes marveled at. Willow leaned against him, her hand resting on his arm, her own Hearth Omega warmth a constant grounding presence. Her scent, wild herbs, summer rain, and the unique sweetness of mate, was his favorite song. "She has your spirit, you know," Willow murmured, her voice soft as a summer breeze. "And your light, my love," Rhys responded, his arm instinctively tightening around her. He felt it, clear as day, the thrum of their bond, stronger and deeper than ever. He looked at his packland sprawling below them, peaceful, prosperous, his people content. The old nightmares still whispered sometimes, faint echoes of fire and loss. But then, he would look at Willow, at Rowan, and the shadows would recede. Love, he'd learned, wasn't a weakness. It was the most formidable armor, the most potent magic. Finn was due to visit next week, his health robust, his letters filled with tales of his studies in the human city, always ending with gratitude for his werewolf family. As if fate demanded it, their lives had woven together in ways none of them could have foreseen. Rowan, having finally caught the butterfly, only to let it go with a delighted gasp, toddled back towards them, her little arms outstretched. Rhys swept her up, her giggles a melody against his chest. In that moment, holding his daughter, With his mate by his side, he knew. This was it. This was everything. The past had shaped him, yes, but it no longer defined him. His future, their future, was bright, boundless, and built on a love that had conquered all. The core emotional question of his life had finally found its answer, not in a word, but in the warmth of his family. Thank you so much for watching this video. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. If you enjoyed what you saw, we've got a whole library of other videos packed with more great content, just like this, waiting for you on our channel. So, why not dive into another one right now? And hey, if you want to make sure you don't miss out on our next upload, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. We'd love to have you join our community and see you in the next video. Thanks again.